Welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and today we're looking at something that affects almost everyone.
Yeah, glad to be here to help break it all down.
So what if I told you that the reason you're so incredibly stressed out at your corporate job right now might have absolutely nothing to do with your boss?
Oh, I love this.
Right. And that it actually has everything to do with the physical rules of a 19th century game played by British military officers in India.
I mean, it sounds completely absurd on the surface. We tend to think of the playing field, whether it's a polished hardwood court or a grassy pitch, as this totally contained ecosystem.
A temporary escape from reality.
Exactly. You go in, you play by this arbitrary set of rules, someone wins, and then you just go back to the real world. But that boundary is, well, it's a complete illusion.
And that is exactly what our stack of research articles and historical notes for today's deep dive reveals. We are exploring the topic of my favorite sport,
What?
but we're going far, far beyond the physical playing field.
Way beyond.
We are going to trace how sports evolved from simple physical pastimes into a universal cultural language. We'll look at how the exact mechanics of a game define corporate psychology, how they shape the modern team player, and finally, how sports secretly dominate the everyday idioms you speak.
Even if you have never picked up a ball in your life.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we can really understand how sports shape our minds and our workplaces, we need to look at the physical games themselves, right? And their surprisingly intricate origins.
I do, because the physical mechanics of a sport literally dictate the psychological lessons it imparts on the people playing it. Our materials highlight this fascinating contrast between two very different physical dynamics, basketball and badminton.
It's such a brilliant contrast when you put them side by side. Like, think about basketball.
Whoa, it's intense.
It is. It's this symphony of fast-paced, high-contact teamwork. You have this heavy bouncing sphere. You're constantly navigating through a dense, sweaty crowd of defenders, and you're trying to score by throwing the ball high into a suspended iron hoop.
Right, and it requires this continuous real-time spatial awareness of where your four teammates are at any given millisecond.
Exactly. It's loud, it's kinetic, and it operates on this continuous flow of shared momentum.
The psychology there is all about synchronization and chaos. But then pivot your mind to badminton, suddenly the entire physical paradigm shifts.
Entirely different.
You're holding a feather-light racket. And I mean, think about the physics of a shuttlecock for a second. It's totally weird, right?
It is.
It's not a sphere, and it doesn't bounce. Because of that cone of feathers, it experiences extreme aerodynamic drag. You can smash it incredibly hard, but instead of maintaining that velocity like a baseball line...
It rapidly decelerates and just drops.
Exactly.
It almost hovers before it falls.
Yeah.
It forces you to play a game of intense anticipation rather than, pure reaction.
Yeah.
You're playing over a net, maintaining a strict, almost polite physical boundary between you and your opponent.
Right, and you're playing to exactly 21 points across a best-of-3 set match.
So it's less about that chaotic basketball flow and much more about intense, chess-like strategic placement.
Exactly. And the history behind this game is just wild. When you think of badminton today, you probably picture a massive Olympic arena or maybe just a casual backyard barbecue.
Sure.
But its origins trace back to a 19th century game with an incredible name, George Cajoles.
George Cajoles. It sounds like a guy who owes you money.
It really does. But it was actually played by British military officers stationed in Pune, India during the 1800s. You have to imagine these officers dealing with the intense heat of India, adapting local Indian games into this strategic back-and-forth volley.
Ah, I see.
And the shuttle talk format was perfect because it didn't require a perfectly flat, hard surface to bounce on.
Which is brilliant. And then as the story goes, those retired officers packed up their rackets and brought the game back to England. But, you might be wondering why you should care about a bunch of guys playing a long game in the 1800s.
Why does it matter?
It's because of what happened next. In 1877, the Bath Badminton Club actually sat down and arranged the first written set of rules. The moment they wrote those rules down, they did something massive. They turned a localized hobby into a piece of universal exportable software.
That is the perfect way to phrase it. It was codified. And that quickly led to the first All England Open in 1899.
Wow.
But what is truly remarkable is the geopolitical shift of the sport's dominance once that software was released into the world. I mean, it originated in India, was codified in English, but look at where the power centers of badminton are today.
Right.
It's been an official Olympic sport since the 1992 Summer Games in Barcelona, but it is now overwhelmingly dominated by Asian countries. China, Indonesia, Nepal, and Korea are absolute powerhouses.
And why is that? Like, why did it take root there so deeply?
A lot of it comes down to urban geography and cultural infrastructure. In highly dense, rapidly urbanizing countries, space is at a massive premium.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah, badminton requires a relatively small physical footprint compared to a sprawling baseball diamond or a massive football pitch. Plus, it heavily rewards agility, precision, and lightning-fast reflexes over sheer physical mass. It just perfectly aligned with the athletic development programs in those regions.
And there's this beautiful full-circle moment highlighted in our research. Prakash Padukone achieved a massive milestone by becoming the first Indian player to win the All-England Badminton Championship in 1980.
Which is incredible.
It brought the sport's highest honor right back to the geographic region of its birth.
It perfectly illustrates how a sport can migrate, evolve, and eventually become a point of immense national pride for regions far beyond where its written rules were first drafted.
You know, reading through these physical descriptions, I couldn't help but formulate an analogy. Choosing your favorite sport feels almost like choosing your personal operating system.
Oh, I like that.
Right. If our physical choices reflect our inner wiring, it makes me wonder, are you naturally a fast-paced, high-contact, continuous flow basketball type of person? Or are you a strategic, patient, calculating badminton type?
It is a great question because the sport you gravitate toward often mirrors your cognitive preferences. Do you thrive in the noisy, synchronized improvisation of a five-person squad?
Right.
Or do you prefer the intense, isolated strategy of a one-on-one matchup, where every single mistake is entirely your own fault? The physical game is just an externalization of how you internally process risk and reward.
But if our physical preferences are so uniquely tailored to our individual brains, how do we ever connect with anyone else? That's the paradox here.
Yeah, Edith.
The very games that divide us into basketball or badminton personalities also serve as the ultimate universal icebreaker. And that moves us from the court to the globe. Sports are clearly not just physical activities. They are a universal language that entirely bypasses geographic and linguistic borders.
There's a deeply poignant anecdote in our reading about a student trying to connect with a new classmate who had just arrived from a different country.
Oh, I remember this one.
Yeah, there was a profound language barrier, a massive cultural gap, a literal wall of unfamiliarity. And the student simply pointed and asked, "Do you like football?"
And just like that, the wall crumbles.
Hmm.
They might not be able to discuss politics or food or music in a shared tongue, but they both know the rules of the pitch. They both know exactly what a goal feels like.
Because the rules of a sport are a shared objective reality. In a world where cultural norms and social expectations vary wildly from border to border, the dimensions of a football pitch or the height of a basketball hoop remain absolute constants. It is a reliable mathematical framework for human connection.
We see this reflected in the cultural geography, too.
Yeah.
The texts point out that basketball and baseball absolutely dominate the cultural consciousness of the United States. And that makes sense, right? Basketball maps beautifully to American ideals of individual stardom within a team structure, often born in dense urban city courts. Meanwhile, badminton and table tennis rule across Asia. And then you have Latin America, where football is described not just as a pastime, but literally like a religion.
And that religious fervor for football in Latin America is tied to its accessibility. All you need is a ball and some open space. It is radically democratic.
Yeah.
But beyond just being popular, these regional preferences teach highly specific life lessons to the populations that revere them. Football, at its core, is a masterclass in understanding your role within a larger system.
Right, and running, as a solo pursuit, strips away the team and teaches pure, brutal discipline and consistency.
Yes, martial arts are fundamentally built on a foundation of deep respect for your opponent, your master, and yourself. And badminton develops acute strategy and immense patience.
Which brings up a fascinating point about global synchronization.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you start to see the profound impact of massive global sporting events like the World Cup or the Olympics.
Oh, it's wild.
These events take all these different regional operating systems and force them into a single shared human experience. During the Olympics, you suddenly have people who never usually watch sports, who couldn't care less about local league standings, passionately debating the nuances of gymnastics scoring or the footwork in fencing.
Guilty as charged.
Right. For 2 weeks, the entire globe opts into the exact same conversation.
It is temporary global synchronization. But what we find is that the core lesson of almost all these games, this fundamental necessity of teamwork, doesn't actually stay in the stadium. It translates directly, almost aggressively, into the most sought-after skill in the corporate world.
This is where we transition from the playing field to the boardroom. Our organizational behavior sources spend a significant amount of time defining what it truly means to be a team player in a business context. And interestingly, it's the exact same definition used by a championship basketball coach.
The business definition of a team player is someone who places the team's best interests above their own individual milestones. It's about actively valuing a diversity of thought, and fundamentally, it requires making personal sacrifices for the group's overall success.
Yeah.
You aren't just passing a ball, you're passing credit, you're passing resources, and you're passing time.
But here's the mechanism that most people miss the therapeutic value of being a team player. We often think of corporate teamwork purely as a productivity metric to make the company more money.
Right, just a buzzword.
Exactly. But functioning as a cohesive unit actually drastically reduces workplace stress. When you're isolated and hyper-competitive, your brain is flooded with cortisol. It is a constant threat state.
Wow.
When you operate as a team, you trigger oxytocin and trust. You literally remove the toxic friction of isolated competition, boosting the mental well-being of the entire office.
Let's anchor this with the specific case studies we reviewed, because they map so perfectly to physical sports. Take Alex, the financial analyst. He realizes his team is drowning in the manual data entry of Excel reports.
Okay.
Now, an individual contributor might just finish their own reports really fast to look like a superstar to the boss. But Alex takes his own weekend time to build an automated macro for the entire team.
Think about what Alex is doing in basketball terms. He is setting an off-ball screen.
Yes.
In basketball, when you set an off-ball screen, you don't even have the ball. The audience isn't looking at you. The cameras aren't on you. You're literally standing still and absorbing a physical hit from a heavy defender just so your teammate gets an open lane to the basket.
That's a great metaphor.
Alex took the physical hit of his lost weekend hours so his entire team could score on Monday.
That is exactly it. Then there's Sarah, the sales associate. She's already hit her targets. She's the star of the quarter. But instead of coasting or hoarding her best leads to protect her status, she uses her after-hours time to coach a struggling new colleague on the statistical aspects of sales.
She's acting as the veteran player coach, elevating the baseline of the entire roster.
Right. And look at Mia, the marketer. She has this radical campaign idea. The traditional lone wolf corporate approach would be to aggressively pitch it alone, guard the intellectual property, and try to take all the glory.
Sure.
Instead, Mia functions like a seasoned badminton player mapping out a long, patient rally.
She doesn't just smash it over the net immediately.
Exactly. She forges alliances. She patiently moves the skeptics out of position by addressing their concerns one by one. She builds a coalition. She shares the ownership of the idea so the team actually has the momentum to execute it.
And finally, we have Steve, a manager facing intense delivery schedule issues. Instead of adopting a dictatorial top-down approach, screaming at everyone to run faster, which usually backfires, he encourages open communication.
Yeah, that rarely works.
Right.
Yeah.
He admits his own blind spots as a leader and brings in outside experts. He checks his ego at the door.
He's the humble head coach who realizes his current playbook isn't working against the defense, so he changes tactics instead of blaming the players.
Exactly.
Okay, but I have to push back here. In theory, this all sounds incredibly harmonious. But let's look at reality. From the time we are kids in school, we're taught to stand out, to be the valedictorian, to get the gold star, to be the top scorer.
Oh, absolutely.
Isn't it incredibly difficult to transition from being the star athlete,
Yeah.
that individual contributor whose entire identity is wrapped up in personal milestones, to just being someone who quietly passes the ball?
It is arguably the most difficult psychological transition a professional can make. You're essentially asking an adult to completely rewrite their brain's reward circuitry.
Yeah.
They've been rewarded their whole life for being the smartest person in the room, and now you want them to be invisible. The research outlines the specific steps required to make this transition. First, it requires a massive upgrade in communication skills, moving from an internal monologue where you solve everything yourself to transparent, vulnerable dialogue.
Which is terrifying for a perfectionist.
Terrifying. Second, it requires the active development of empathy. You have to force yourself to understand the emotional and professional hurdles of your colleagues rather than just getting annoyed that they are slower than you.
Right.
And third, it requires participating in shared decision-making, which means accepting that your brilliant idea might not be the one chosen and genuinely being okay with that.
And if you can't make that transition, like if you insist on being the ball hog in the boardroom,
The warnings are severe. Lacking these team skills doesn't just annoy your coworkers, it has catastrophic business consequences. It stunts organizational growth, craters team morale, and eventually kills your competitive edge. A team of mediocre players who trust each other will consistently, mathematically outperform a dysfunctional group of isolated geniuses.
here's where it gets really interesting. Even if you never step onto a physical court, and even if you work entirely alone from your living room, the rules of sports are actively dictating how you communicate every single day.
This is the intersection of athletics and linguistics. Our linguistic sources dive into how deeply sports idioms are embedded in the bedrock of our English vocabulary. You do not need to possess a single athletic bone in your body to speak fluently like a professional athlete.
I was reading through this list and I had this massive realization. I literally told a client yesterday that I wanted to get the ball rolling on a new project. I've never played a team sport in my life, but I am subconsciously using the physics of momentum to explain a marketing timeline.
It's true. We use these phrases completely divorced from their original context. Take, give it your best shot. We say this to a friend before a big exam or a scary job interview. It just means trying your absolute hardest.
Right.
But it originates from the highly specific physical act of taking aim and firing, or swinging a club, or throwing with maximum physical exertion.
Or consider the phrase level playing field.
Yeah.
We use this constantly in business, in law, and in politics to describe a situation where everyone has an equal, fair chance to succeed.
Yeah, all the time.
But the mechanism behind it is literal geography. It comes from the absolute necessity of ensuring a football pitch or a tennis court doesn't have a physical slant. If the field isn't level, one team has a literal gravitational advantage over the other.
And think about the emotional weight of being blindsided. We use this when we are shocked by something we didn't see coming, a sudden corporate layoff, an unexpected tax bill, or a brutal breakup.
Oh, that's a good one.
But it paints a very specific, violent athletic picture. You're a quarterback. You're intensely focused downfield on your receivers. And you get absolutely crushed by a 250-pound linebacker coming from the side you physically couldn't see.
Ouch.
The idiom carries the visceral physical violence of the sport directly into our emotional lives.
And of course, the classic romantic rejection telling someone they are out of your league. You're acknowledging a mismatch. You're recognizing someone is simply operating at a higher level of success or attractiveness. But it directly references the tiered division of professional sports leagues. You wouldn't put a minor league small-town baseball team up against the New York Yankees.
What's fascinating here is the psychological utility of these phrases. Why do we lean so heavily on athletic metaphors? Why don't we just say what we mean?
Why do you think that is?
It's because these idioms brilliantly simplify highly complex, emotionally stressful human interactions. Think about a high-stakes business negotiation or the agonizing pain of a romantic rejection. These are messy, subjective, highly unpredictable situations. By wrapping them in the vocabulary of a game, we instantly lower the stakes. We translate the chaos of human existence into universally understood, mathematically bounded game mechanics.
Wow. We are all subconsciously playing a verbal sport to protect our own egos.
Pretty much.
It gives us a framework to process failure and success without it destroying our identity. Think about it. If you lose a massive client, you didn't suffer an irreversible existential crisis. You just dropped the ball. If you ask someone out and they say no, it's not a commentary on your worth as a human being. You just swung and missed. It provides a psychological safety net.
Precisely. It allows us to communicate complex vulnerability without entirely exposing our soft underbellies. The sports metaphor acts as a protective linguistic shield.
It is incredible to look back at the ground we've covered today. We started this journey standing on the dusty, sweltering 19th century badminton courts of Pune, India, looking at how the physics of a decelerating shuttlecock changes the human brain.
What a journey.
We watched that localized physical game transform into exportable code and eventually into the global, universal language of the Olympic Games. We then took those exact same rules of teamwork and applied them to the intense psychology of the modern corporate boardroom, seeing exactly how an off-ball screen reduces workplace stress and drives innovation.
Yeah.
And finally, we uncovered the hidden athletic structures of our daily casual speech.
It reveals a profound underlying truth about human nature. We fundamentally need structured play. We crave the boundaries, the rules, and the shared objectives that sports provide. And we don't just need them for physical exercise. We actively use those boundaries to organize our societies, to structure our economies, and to process our most intimate relationships.
So, whether you are actually swinging a lightweight racket on a Sunday afternoon, or you are quietly sacrificing your weekend to help a colleague automate an Excel sheet, or you're simply trying to get the ball rolling in a Monday morning meeting, the core principles of sports are constantly, relentlessly at play in your life.
You're always on the field, even when you're absolutely convinced you are just sitting in the stands.
So, what does this all mean? We've established that our modern society, our corporate workplaces, and the very idioms we speak are entirely built upon the physical metaphors of traditional, real-world sports: gravity, momentum, boundaries, and physical sacrifice. But we are currently living through a massive, unprecedented technological shift. If human connection and corporate culture are destined to be shaped by our dominant games, how might all of this shift as virtual reality and esports become the new global pastime? When the physical limitations of a bouncing ball or gravity or a swinging racket are completely removed from the equation, what will the team player of a purely digital future actually look like? Will we still talk about needing a level playing field when the field itself is just a line of code? Something to think about the next time you step onto the court.